Hi, I'm Sam, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And today I'm going to be doing a bit of a chat about a program that I've been following for the past half a year or so. And it's basically the program called Athletic Strength Formula from Overtime Athletes. I think it's a really interesting program. It's a really interesting way to look at strength and conditioning, especially general training for people that's doing either court sports or field sports. So right now I'm gonna start talking about what I think of the program, what did I actually do, any tweaks, any pros and cons. So stay tuned. So just to give a really brief overview of my training background, I've started doing weights training semi-seriously for about 2 3 years, and it's always been on and off because of myself being an international student, having to move between UK and China for most of the time. So that means I don't really go to gym consistently. I don't really have access to gym until like very recently because in China the gym market is quite new. So for the past so like in like about 2016 or so, like gyms aren't really everywhere, and it takes about like 30 minutes just to walk to my nearest gym. That's why I didn't do it nearly as often as I want. So my strength sort of just remained at around 110, 120 in terms of the squat, and nothing really too shocking in terms of like all the other lifts. And for a while, my training purpose has always been to get better at jumping and just get better at general fitness. So I don't have like a really extensive training background in terms of strength training alone. Like my I don't even consider myself to be an intermediate lifter yet. It's just my training purpose is slightly different from most people. That's why I think my input could be quite interesting. So my PBs, back when I tried powerlifting just for fun, I struggled with like benching my body weight. My squat currently plateaus at 140. That's like how much I know I can squat. But there are many variables in terms of that number. For example, I was not wearing any shoes. I actually just got a pair of weightlifting shoes, powerlifting shoes. I don't know which it is, but it's like more general, just gym shoes to give them more steady support. And because I've been lifting barefooted basically every time when it comes to squats and stuff, so I think this will probably increase my number by a little bit, but not that much. Like sometimes because my I can go really deep in my squats, so I lose a bit of tension at the end, no matter how hard I try. So I think that could help a bit, but again, I'm not really chasing numbers here. It's just a rough estimate of my squatting ability being slightly above 1.5 times my body weight. And I really want to get up to the range where it's like about a bit more than 2.1, which will be 180 kilograms in terms of the squat. And for deadlift, I last time I really tested it, conventional was 145 for 3 reps. That was back in August when I was still following my previous training cycle, and it's literally just a program I stole online from American University basketball team. Sorry. So basically, that's my background. 145 level 3, so probably about 155, 1 RM, maybe 160. I'm not sure, but it's probably not going to be a good 160. And my score is probably 140, maybe 145, and my bench is like 80. So really, I'm not a really strong lifter. So I'm just giving a. So the reason I'm making this video is just to give my input and my opinion into this specific program written by Overtime Athletes. Right. So basically, the training structure is like this. So for a session, it starts off with some general corrective stretches. So that is basically some stretching up the normal areas that's going to be tight. And contrary to conventional belief, many people say static stretching right before you do a heavy lift is not good for you. To some extent, I do agree with that line of thinking. However, there are differences as to which muscles you're stretching, because if you are stretching the muscles that you're going to contract, for example, quads when it comes to squats, that means, yeah, obviously the structure change is going to make you feel different when it comes to the actual lift. But what if you're stretching the antagonistic muscles, the muscles on the opposite side of the muscles you're going to be working? So, for example, your hip flexors to free up your glutes, and basically your hips, because we are doing so much sitting throughout the day that when we get into the gym, it's bound to be tight in multiple areas. So I would think it makes sense at the very start of the session just to free up those areas, get some blood flowing, make sure you're comfortable being in those positions. So what I usually do is some hip flexor stretches, so it's like some modification of like yoga flow just to open up the hips. A pigeon stretch is a classic because my outside of my hamstrings is quite tight usually for some reason. I'm not sure, and pigeon stretch usually works great. And also groin stretch is like quite a staple of my general corrective stretches. And I'll basically anything around the hips, I'm just like trying to open it up. And then I do some activation because I went to the physio actually about 3 weeks ago, and it's basically saying, because when I was doing some external rotation stuff, I broke the previous elastic band, so I stopped doing the normal banded activational work altogether. I was just doing some body weight, like glute work basically. And I was doing too much internal rotation hips, so many of the hurdle drills that you see a lot of track athletes do, instead of some external rotation, which is the normal banded squats, clamshells, those kind of things. Ever since I started adding external rotation work for the hips as well as internal rotation, my general knee and hip health has gone up by quite a bit. So I was getting a bit of knee pain to the side of my knees. I think it's a bit of a IT band syndrome, but just very mildly. And ever since I started adding my activation work back in, it's gone a lot better. And then it's like power, speed, and ballistic movements. So what I usually do as part of my warm-ups, when I have like a lot of time, I'll just do some of the drills that my high jump coach basically prescribes to us. And I'll also do some warm-ups with Olympic bars, because I was like following Zach Talender's channel about Olympic weightlifting. Everything he preaches is very interesting, so I'm just doing some basic drills that he says just to get my body's warm up. So I've been doing a bit of snatches, overhead squats. I really enjoy it, and it really challenges my shoulder mobility, which I think my mobility is not bad. It's mainly the stability and strength for me that needs a bit of work. And after the warm-ups, it goes on to speed and ballistic movements. So I do a bit of hang cleans, power cleans, and then recently I've started to add some complex training. So there will be some really heavy isometric position work. So that would be like pushing against, trying to lift the squat rack by like basically pushing the bar into the pins and trying to contract and push up as hard as you can for like 6 seconds or so. And then I go straight into pogo jumps, which is basically just hop up and down really quickly. And after that, the power and ballistics movement is the main lift. So usually there are 3 segments: your normal patterns, like adjusted patterns when Chris at Overtime Athletes uses triphasic training. So when we do the general overall macro structure training cycle, we do 4 weeks of eccentric, 4 weeks of isometric, and 4 weeks of really focusing, really moving the bar quickly, concentric. And that's basically what the second segment out of the 3 for the main lifts are. And the last one is just work at the top end. So for me, I really enjoy the working at the top end. I think it's probably my favorite. And I've made some adjustments to the main lifts as well, because initially he suggests doing overhead press, bench press, squats, and deadlift. So work whatever kind of deadlift. And the key is just to get you strong in this main 4 lifts. But the more I learn about just strength and conditioning in general, the more I add little tweaks to what I do. So I'll talk about that in a later segment. And after the main lift, it's just the auxiliary work. And when I have more time in the holidays, when I can just spend about 3 hours loving myself in the gym, I will do about some unilateral work that's not your main lift. So on squat days, I will do some RDLs, and on my RDL days, spoilers, I change out deadlifts for Romanian deadlifts just to target my posterior chain quite a lot more. But again, that's a personal choice. That's a personal decision. And I never got up to like really crazy numbers for my RDLs. But I just personally, I think it's a really good challenge. It's my weakness. That's why I'm going to work on it. So for auxiliaries, I do some single leg RDLs or hyperextensions if I have access to the machine. And I'll move on to one of my staples, which is one leg hamstring rollouts. Because I pulled my hamstring 2 Christmas ago, so that would be December of 2016. And I pulled my hamstrings because my strength balance in my upper leg is quite unnatural, really. My hamstring and glute strength is really weak, so I've been doing a lot of that. And I started off from only being able to do like a both leg hamstring rollouts on a physio ball to being able to wrap out one leg. And I usually do about 3 or 4 sets of 10, depending on how I feel. And after that, I just go into some core work. And that's the general structure of the training. I'm not going to review too much detail of this because this is just a general review. So basically, corrective stretches, activation, warm up, speed, power, ballistic movements, your main lifts, and your auxiliaries. And just to give you an overview about what I actually do throughout the 12-week training cycle. So because my term is being split into 8 weeks of term time, and then 6 weeks of holidays, 8 weeks of term time, 6 weeks of holidays, and then 8 weeks, which is this term. So because I am playing in the university team for basketball, I wasn't really able to crank out many sessions in the first term. I'm just doing like the general university. Basically, the club offers a strength and conditional session once a week, and it's mainly conditioning based. So it's like some sort of a HIIT type workout with like really light weights, really lots of reps, like 15 seconds rest with 30 seconds work or 45 seconds work depending on the day. And so basically, I haven't been able to really build on my strength in that period. So I only started doing this program properly in the Christmas holidays for about 4 weeks or so. So that's when I did the eccentric part of the segment. And after that, shortly, I decided to like add a bit more strength training into my weekly routine because I was simultaneously doing basketball training, rowing sessions, as well as one session of high jump each week. So that means I really need to be careful where I fit in my strength training programs. And I was able to do on and off the sessions. And I started adding elastic bands to my main lifts. I mean, it's just squats, really. So these are the kind of bands I'm using. It's quite heavy. And again, it's similar to doing squats off pins or basically quarter squats. You are trying to overload at the very top, trying to like get your body adjusted to feeling that heavy load, especially when you just unrack the bar and start working out. And using the bands, I mean, I'm not sure how much it has done in terms of improving my PR, but it has certainly made me stronger. And I can definitely feel it because every time I do high jump, I'll be able to tell how much power, how much strength I've gained over the past week or lost, because the more running and the more like basketball games you play, you're just doing lots of running at about 85% for a while. So it doesn't really help towards your absolute strength and power. And basically, I do that on and off for a few weeks, and then in the Easter holidays, that's when I really start to focus on this program. So I start doing the isometric and then the concentric work all the way until like this week, really, where I'll be finishing the very last week of the program on Friday. And that would have been me going through the program, although not continuously because of my scheduling and the fact that I need to play games and making sure I don't get too tired before the basketball game even started because there is just not much point. So onto some exercise changes that I've made to the program. I haven't changed the big deal. I think squatting is very valuable. I have considered doing a bit of front squat, but I just stuck with back squat at the very end. And after the eccentric cycles, I start using bands just to improve the lockout. So that's the one tweak I made. I use it for my normal sets, my triphasic sets, and especially getting heavy in the squatting off pins or partial sets. And I think I just really enjoy the process. I think it's a lot of fun doing it. That's why I use the bands. And also another thing I just mentioned, which is the Romanian deadlift instead of the conventional. Because personally, I'm not really looking to get really big numbers in the deadlift, even though there are goals that I set, which is literally right there on the window that I put a sticker on just to remind me what I want to do. And I do have a strength goal, like a specific number I want to hit, but that doesn't mean I'm chasing numbers. So that doesn't mean I'm going to like start using straps instead of actually training my grip or getting a belt so I can just bump up the number a tiny bit. Because for me personally, I just don't see that as being necessary. It could be different for you because if you're training for powerlifting, obviously I'm not an expert, so you should go to an expert. And if the expert says getting a belt and getting straps can make you stronger in terms of powerlifting, sure. But in any main sports that I do usually, I don't really use a belt when I'm doing the sports, whether it being rowing, basketball, or track, which is what I want to focus on next year. I just don't really. So my kind of thinking, which may be quite narrow, is just my own preference, which is if you in a competition environment, if you don't wear a belt, there's not really much point wearing a belt in training if the aim of the belt is to hide some weakness. And in my case, that weakness is my posterior chain. And that's why I use Romanian deadlifts as a specific stimuli to make sure that I really engage my glutes. I'm really using my hamstrings, really strengthening my lower back so that I will be able to perform much better and just be overall much more balanced in terms of my strength levels, both posteriorly and anteriorly. Are those even words? Anyway, onto the pros and cons of this program. So pros, first of all, I really enjoyed doing this program. I think it's a lot of fun, especially each segment gives you a different, really training purpose. So you'll be able to train for speed at the start of the session when you're still fresh, and you can train for strength when you're a little bit fatigued, and you can also do a little bit of bodybuilding at the very end. And it's quite challenging at times. I think the worst bit is going to be the isometric Romanian deadlift. It's supposed to be a full count, but I can never make it that far because the weight and the grip and as well just the movement itself is just really challenging. So it provides a good chance for you to grow, definitely. But yeah, that's why I put challenging as one of the pros. And it's also super detailed when you get the package from Chris, and you basically have access to a huge database of different kinds of exercises that you can choose. So if you want to focus on specific qualities like packing on more lean muscle, then he has the exercise online for you for that. And for me, if you just want to get strong but don't want to slow down, you can just do the general power movements as well as the strength. So it's basically got everything you want to do. It's a really general preparation for anyone that's doing any sort of court sport or field sports. And then right now it's time to move on to the cons because nothing is really perfect, and I have faced some difficulties when I was doing this program. What the hell? Okay. So basically, first and foremost, each session takes a long time, like a really long time. 3 hours seems to be the normal time for me, but ideally it's only 4 times a week, and I've only been doing my lower body lift. And for my upper body, I'm just doing the general body weight stuff because if I'm not even strong enough to like wrap out many pull-ups, do like really different variations of push-ups, then I don't really see the point of me just loading weights on the bar because I'm not good enough basically. I'm not at the point where body weight movements is just too easy, so I need to move on to use barbell movements. So so going back to the cons, time commitment is definitely one thing. 3 hour sessions, 4 times a week, maybe, yeah, 4 times a week. So that would be 12 hours in total, which is not outrageous. But if you think about it, I mean, it also depends on your personal schedule and personal preference, really. So for me, in the holidays, I can absolutely do 3 hours, 3 hours each session. And I don't really mind because I just want to go away from the desk and not work for a few hours. Also, another con, which might be debatable, is basically the fact that it covers so many different aspects of performance that you're trying to chase. It does power and speed, strength, as well as bodybuilding or hypertrophy. So the fact that it's so general means if you are trying to achieve a very specific goal in this current training cycle, you might not be able to do it so well. And it's so it depends on what you really want. So if you want to get really, really strong within a time span of, let's say, 12 weeks or 8 weeks or 4 weeks even, then this program provides you with you a really solid general guidelines as to what kind of things you should do. But again, if you want to really get fast, the best way is to just sprint, to just go outside. So yeah, that basically wraps up my basic review of Overtime Athlete's athletic strength formula. I basically, like, the guy offers you a general training structure and gives you like a brief overview of the philosophy, but that's about it, and you have to fill in all the gaps. And I particularly enjoyed it because it has guided me into like learning how to program better. And I think it's gonna prove quite valuable further down the road for me. So after finishing the program, I'm going to take a week off, which is next week, and it just happens to be my exam week. So fun times, high stress, low level activity, hopefully lots of sleep. Perfect recipe for rest week. I guess I'll probably load up on some calories because I'm not really trying to get that summer body. I'm just trying to get better and better in terms of performance. And in the end, yeah, it's definitely improved. It's definitely helped me in a lot of ways. Some in the gym, and definitely a lot out of the gym. And I definitely like upped my strength because I can tell from my strength numbers. So about 3-4 weeks back, when I'm not feeling too good when I'm sort of like on a medium to low day, I managed to power clean 95 kilograms for 3 reps. So 95 for 3. Personally, I think that's quite a good weight in terms of power clean, because right now my body weight is around 82 to 84 kilograms. So I think, yeah, any power clean that's above your body weight is quite a solid indication of your power. So right now, after I finish that program, I'm going to move on to another one. I want to be focusing a lot more on track and field because I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, mainly being the Performance Podcast, as well as Justify Performance Podcast. And I think I learned a lot of things about high performance athletes, especially in track and field. And that's why next year I want to apply what I learned, both doing this program and from other online sources, as well as from the podcasts, to create a program that's suited for me. And my current goal is just to get faster, get stronger. So after next week, I have 4 weeks of term left before I'm flying off to Austria to do like a summer research internship hopefully I will be able to make some videos about that. But that the 4 weeks before I leave the UK, I'm going to do a program inspired by the great track and field coach Dan Jones, and his program is called Simple Strength or Easy Strength. I mean, one thing he said quite a lot in that one podcast I listened to was, it's simple, but it's not easy. So it's basically 2 sets of 5 exercises, 5 principal movements that you want to master, and you do that for 5 days a week, 2 sets of 5. So that, for me, I'm going to do 2 by 5 for squats, RDLs, and some upper body push and pull, ab work, as well as high rep explosive work. So I'm going to do some kettlebell swings, maybe with a band resisting it. I'll see, depending on how I feel. But the aim is to be able to come back day after day. So it's quite different from the previous approach from this particular program, where you do squats once a week. For Dan Jones, you do squats 5 times a week. And overall, it adds up to the same amount of sets you're doing. But I can't really comment on what kind of effect it will have on me personally. So I have to wait and see. But I'm really excited to get started with that. And alongside that, I'm also doing some more sprinting and more running, just because I really miss running, and the weather is starting to get really good outside, so I'm just gonna do more running under the sun. And I've also been doing some daily upper body work, so I might just take the upper body push and pull out of it, and I'll just do all my upper body work in my dailies. That's inspired by great Alan Roberts and Everyday Fitness. It's a really great YouTube channel. I really enjoy watching his content. And basically, yeah, those dailies. So it's like, so what I do for the dailies is mainly upper body push pull at different planes. So you have I'll just use cable machines mainly, and you pull from high, medium, and low. And that's basically the aim, to get your body to work in multiple planes, push and pull using the same weight to improve like your overall stability and balance around your shoulder joint. And I think it's helped me look a lot better. I mean, obviously you can't really tell, or maybe I don't look that good, but it's all in the head really. I really enjoy doing that daily push and pull in multiple planes. So I'm just gonna keep doing that. And yeah, that's basically it. That's the program review. Overall, I think it's a really positive experience. I would recommend it. The price is $27, which is a bit less in terms of pounds. I think it's a pretty good deal. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. And if you happen to stumble upon my channel, this is one of those really improvised and just me chatting to you videos. So if you like it, please click like. If you don't, click a dislike. I don't really mind. I don't really care, to be honest. And if you want to know what happens after my next phase of training, next phase of easy strength, getting stronger every day, keep coming back, trying to keep getting those 2 sets of 5 high quality reps, then I'll probably make a video about it in about 4 weeks or so. So see you then.